Hi everyone, in this video I'll be discussing Corvette batteries and changing my battery in my C5 Corvette. Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel about building a kit car, Corvettes, and other car topics. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the notification buttons below and share with others on social media. Since I've had this car, I have not been able to go more than 12 days without starting it. After that, I have to charge it up before I go. In fact, one day I was leaving for a car show at 6:30 in the morning and I couldn't get the car started. Due to the position of the cars in my garage, there was no way for me to jump start the car, so I had to pull the battery out of one of my other cars just to get this started and get out the door. Of course, once I drive a little bit, the car is fine since the alternator charges it up. Well, I knew that Corvettes are notorious for batteries having to be on a tender, but I was like, this is some pretty high maintenance behavior. Through all my research on fixing the nuances of this car, I did have one tech tell me that what I'm experiencing is extreme and I should get the battery checked. And if it's okay, then go see what is draining the battery. So I needed to go to Chevrolet anyways to have a few things checked out that I was not willing to do on the car or could not figure out on my own. And they told me that the battery needed to be replaced and gave me a price of around $159. Knowing the issue with these cars draining so much, I wanted to verify what other batteries were out there before committing. So I did a bunch of research and found out that this model car, you need a battery with a Class 78, sometimes called Group 78, a minimum of 515 cold cranking amps, and an RC or reserve capacity of 120. Reserve capacity is how long the battery will last at full draw. So this is a number you want higher for a Corvette since they are always drawing more than most cars when the car is off and parked. So I pull up to my local auto parts store, assuming my battery's bad. I go in and say, what do you have that has 78, 550, and 120? And they got nothing that meets that criteria. Okay, well, could we at least test the battery? So a guy grabs a testing unit and we go out to the car. Well, first off, the alligator clips are worn on this unit and will not hold anything smaller than maybe a size 12 bolt. And the bolts on this battery are around 8 millimeters. So I personally have to hold these things on by hand. And he goes, yep, says it's good. And I'm like, did you run a load on the battery? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, does your tester have a load to load the battery? I'm not sure what you're talking about. And at this point, I'm like dumbfounded. I'm like, really? Like, you don't have any clue on this? And so he's going through all these buttons on the tester and, looking for like load or something like that. And he runs another test and he's like, yep, it's good. It was 11.9 volts the first time, and now it's 11.4 the second. And I'm like, all right, dude, thanks for your time. And I'm thinking like, WTF, like really? The battery just dropped a half a volt in the 5 seconds you've been standing in front of this car, and you think that's good? And we all know that the battery should be at like 12.6 or 12.8 volts to start with. So I literally like blow this guy off, hey, thanks. And then I go across the street to a competitor store and they have a battery in stock that would work. And I also asked if he could test the battery. So we go out to the car and he just so happens to have the same exact tester, but with good leads on it. And I'm like, does this put a load on the battery? He's like, yep. And then he runs it and it fails the test. And he's like, yep, battery's bad. So we go back in and I'm like, wow, he actually knows what he's talking about. How nice. So the battery he has is over $200 and it's a brand I've never heard of. And I'm not buying a generic brand of battery for over $200. So I called up the parts department at Chevrolet and asked them what the specs on the battery was that they suggested while I was in service. And keep in mind, service doesn't give you that kind of information normally. It just say, hey, you need a new battery and we have one. So I kind of wanted to match it up to all the research I was doing. And they had one close to what I was looking for, so I decided to go down there and pick it up. And I'll install it myself, save the $50. But when I get there, I give him my VIN number, and he actually says that the specs are a little bit different on the reserve capacity. And he was saying that it was actually a lower spec. And I'm like, no, I want a minimum of 120 just because I know how these cars are. So he finds one that has the RC of 120 and it was only $130. And it was for AC Delco class or group 78, 700 cranking amps, cold cranking amps, and 120 reserve capacity. So if you need to get a battery for your Corvette, you will want to get an AGM battery, which is absorbed glass matte. They do not leak like other types of batteries. The specs for a C5 97 through 2003 is class 78, 550 cold cranking amps, and a reserve capacity of 120. Now the year 2004 C5 has a class 86. For the 2005 C6, you use a class 86 battery, 500 cold cranking amps, and an RC of 110. For the rest of the C6s from 2006 up, it's a class 90 battery. The C7, which is from 2013 to 2019, will be a class 48 with a top terminal instead of the side terminals on the C5 and C6 batteries. Most batteries, when you go to buy them with an RC of 120, are going to be in the 700 cold cranking amps range. So I would say get the proper class for your year of car that you have, and then have a minimum of at least 600 cold cranking amps and a minimum of RC 120, and you'll be good to go. Keep in mind, these cars are not engineered to last more than 21 days without use. So the larger the RC time, the better. And if you're going to have the car off for longer than 21 days, use a battery tender, which is not a charger. Something just to keep a little voltage on the battery so it does not wear down. If you use a charger for any long period of time, you will ruin the battery. So let's change this battery out. You can see the old battery that was in this car is actually not the correct battery. It's not the right group, so it's too small for the area of the battery to fit in, and not the right reserve capacity time. To do this job, you will need ear protectors, the remote for the car, an 8mm wrench, and a 12mm socket with extension. At least this is what fits on my car. The first thing we're going to do is remove the negative terminal. But there is no room in the area of the battery, and while you're unscrewing this, it's going to touch a few times and trigger the car alarm. I kind of forgot about this. So I keep the remote with me and keep hitting the unlock until I get the screw unclear. Then I remove the positive side. Then I remove the battery holder that clamps the battery to the car. Then we pull the battery out, clean out the area. Mine is just a little dirt and debris, but if you have any acid spill, use rubber gloves and some baking soda to clean it up. There is computers below, so don't just start pouring things in there. I would use a wet towel and dust it with baking soda and just wipe things up. Then lay in the new battery and bolt on your holder. Make sure your earplugs are on, hook up the positive terminal and then the negative. The alarm will go off again, so use the remote to unlock it. Tighten to 11 pounds per square inch if you have a torque wrench, and you're good to go. I hope this was helpful. So till next time, please hit the subscribe and notification buttons, and have a great day.